And all right, and there we go.
All right.
And it looks like we're recording. And all right, I'll just give you a little intro. And since I know that we're time constrained, I don't want to spend too much time doing it. I will say, do you remember who I am? Or
yes, I do. Your two kids. Yes.
Yeah, just thought I would.
Stella and.
It's okay. Stella was the one that was dressed as someone you created. So
yes.
It's Anya. Anya was.
Anya. Thank you.
Yeah. So okay. All right. I'm going to give a little break and then we'll come in.
All right.
All right. Hello, everybody. My name's John Marcotte. Welcome to Heroic Girls. And my guest today is Kelly Sue DeConnick. She is an Eisner-nominated writer who lives in Portland with her husband, writer Matt Fraction, and their two children, Tallulah and Henry. She is probably best known as the creator of the Carol Danvers version of Captain Marvel. She also created the creator-owned titles Pretty Deadly and Bitch Planet, and she is the current writer on DC's Aquaman. Kelly Sue, well, thank you so much for agreeing to do this.
Thank you for having me, John.
All right. So you grew up on military bases when you were a kid because your dad was in the Air Force, and your mom would buy you Wonder Woman comics as kind of a bribe for when you did good things. So
you did your research.
I did my research.
Good job.
What did young Kelly DeConnick get out of reading the adventures of Diana Thermosea? What did those comic books do for you?
Oh boy, I've never really tried to articulate it, I guess, but I loved it got me into Greek mythology for one thing. I loved kind of the world building and learning everything about the gods, and that actually led me into reading a lot of Greek plays, which probably ended up playing a large role in my studying theater and having a theater degree. So yeah, it was pretty important.
Now, when I called you Kelly DeConnick earlier because that was a clever lead into the next question, which is when you started writing professionally, you requested that they credit you as Kelly Sue DeConnick on purpose.
Yeah.
Very intentionally. Could you talk a little bit about why that was important to have Sue in your name when you were credited on those early comics?
Well, because Kelly is a gender neutral name, and I wanted young girls and women to see that the book was written by a woman so that they can understand that this was an avenue that was open to them as well. And they weren't guests, that they could see themselves as centered. And there were generations of women who were forced to kind of hide their gender identity to not have it affect the sales of their books or how their books were marketed. A lot of women who either went by their initials or changed their names in order to avoid the stigma of being a woman writer. But because of the sacrifices that they made, that allows me to be adamant now about making sure that I'm credited such that young women can see that comics are welcome to them as well.
That actually brought to mind J.K. Rowling, who quite intentionally just used her first initials because she was having a hard time getting her book solicited when she went under her own name.
Yeah, so, there's a ton. Yeah.
Yeah. So before you got your I think your big break with Captain Marvel at Marvel, you spent 7 years translating what I have written down as 11,000 pages of Japanese manga in English for Viz and Tokyo Pop. What do you think Western creators can learn from how comics are done in Japan? You've got that could be a master thesis on how Japanese comics are written. What do you think you might have learned from reading those?
Well, I mean, they don't adhere as strongly to 3-act structure as American storytelling in general, not just American comics, tend to. And for that reason, it's a little, after 11,000 pages, you start to learn that they have their systems as well. But at first, you're like, I have no idea where this is going, because it doesn't adhere to sort of the the Western rhythms and patterns. It
Right.
doesn't adhere to, and that's kind of fascinating. But there's a lot of other interesting things too, stylistically, that were very much an influence on me as I came to write original English language American comics. Um, I don't like uh, off-panel balloon tales, for instance, which is manga tends to prefer just tailless balloons, and you
Right.
understand where that came from, which is silly, but it's true. I also like to use a balloon to indicate a silence. So I'll use either an empty balloon or a balloon with just an ellipse in it, which is very manga,
Right.
to really kind of underscore the silence. There's a few other things as well, but the biggest thing had nothing to do with the difference between. Well, I guess it didn't have nothing to do with the difference between Japanese and English, but the biggest thing was just simply spending, 11,000 plus pages writing dialogue only. So
Right.
it was a real boot camp in dialogue writing.
Right. Um, so, just switching gears just slightly, as a longtime Portland native, I thought you were the perfect person to answer this question. What show do you think does a better job of representing Rip City, Portlandia or Stumptown?
Oh, so tough. Okay, so I have to say I'm not a Portland native. I've been here for a decade, but
Right.
only my daughter had the good sense to be born here. The rest of us in the family had to find our way here.
Right.
Oh boy, I'm gonna have to go with Stumptown, only because uh, I I mean, I love Portlandia too. Portlandia, like we make the joke that it's the secret is it's a documentary, but I super love Stumptown, and also Greg is a good friend, and I don't want to be on his bad side, so
Yeah, you might actually see this. There's a chance of that.
yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. So
Yeah. Wise choice. Now, you're currently writing Aquaman,
I am.
but I think you're kind of famous for writing like the prototypical strong female characters. The
Hmm.
people know you for your creator and run stuff, and people like Carol Danvers. So when you're pitching books or editors are coming with you to you with projects, do you find that they are hesitant or that they don't think to give you books that feature men? Do they
Oh yeah, that's absolutely a thing, and it's. I mean, everybody has to. I will cry sexism when I think there is sexism. In this case, it's a thing where everybody kind of gets cast.
right,
And as a writer managing your career, you have to, whether it's like, oh, she writes strong female leads, or she writes horror books, or whatever. You if you don't want to make sure that you are specializing for the rest of your career, you have to do some careful management to make sure that um, is not an idea that gets too set.
right,
I think the first thing um, that it was asked if I would consider or if I would be interested in at DC was Supergirl,
right,
which I made my career writing Carol Danvers, who was
right,
a, hyper powerful blonde. And they were like, would you be interested in writing Kara Danvers, who is a hyper powerful blonde? And was like, maybe. I have done that already.
right,
Um, and so not that the characters are the same, but I just felt like I needed to steer away from that.
right,
And when Aquaman was proposed, it was literally, oh, you wouldn't want to pitch on Aquaman, would you? And I kind of laughed about it. And then my husband, Matt, was like, listen, I think you should think about that because two things. One, Jason Momoa.
Yeah.
And two, he's like, I don't know what Aquaman by You looks like. I have no idea what that book is, and that is exciting and interesting to me. I was like,
I think Aquaman might be kind of in a similar space as Carol was before you got her, and just that been around a long time, but I don't know if there's that one definitive take on the character that everybody said this is who that character is. So there's some space to work with. Is that fair?
yeah, I mean, yes and no. There've been some really, but like just like you know, there were some definitive runs on Carol. And Brian Reed had a 50 issue run not long before I came on.
Right, right.
Um, uh, and Aquaman certainly has a much longer history than Carol and some really definitive runs. But I do think he's a character that is unfairly dismissed and hasn't always sometimes people haven't known what to do with um his unique power set.
Right.
um
Okay. Um, Stephen King, I found this great quote by Stephen King, and I'm going to read it so I get it right. Milk always takes the flavor of what's next to it in the icebox. And this was in an introduction he wrote for a collection of Harlan Ellison novels.
okay.
Harlan Ellison essays, I should say. And so I was thinking, you are a tall glass of milk that has been sitting in the same ice box as Matt Fraction for 17 years. So, or you can flip it. Matt's been
Yeah, sure.
So, are there any ways that you have influenced each other's writing over the years, or do you really try not to do that, or how does that function? Being two fairly famous comics creators living in the same house.
Well, I mean, he's so good. It's infuriating. Um, yeah, I my ego is like strong like Hulk, and there are things I think I have a skill set I've worked hard for, uh, and I have some tools in my toolbox.
Right.
Um, but Matt understands comics form and
Right.
thinks about comics in a way that I do not and cannot, and few people actually can. I mean, I'm clearly super biased, but I think uh, I think he's one of the best there's ever been. So hey, I'll say it.
you know,
Uh,
I'm not related to him in any way, shape, or form, but I will go right there with you. The Hawkeye: My Life as a Weapon is a book that I'm constantly buying and then giving away to somebody and then buying
yeah,
it. It's just such a great way to introduce someone into the world of comics. He and David Aja, the way they, again, use the form, it was just amazing. So
truly, and and he delivers something as unique as that every time he's at bat, and whether it's creator owned um, or corporate comics, he always approaches it very personally, and is deeply I mean, like, are you reading his Jimmy Olsen right now?
I am not. I would tell you why I'm not is because I didn't know he was writing it because I'm poor and I can't buy all the comics I want.
No worries. This is what
I,
libraries are for. So
uh,
when there is a collection, go find it at the library. Um, but his Jimmy Olsen is brilliant and
right.
so much smarter than it has any right to be. It infuriates me.
Right. Yeah, actually, the last thing I bought from him is I got the first couple volumes of Casanova, which are actually sitting on my nightstand right now. So I'm back, things that I missed, and I have the last of the Independents that I just found the other day. Had
Uh,
that, I picked it up. So
that's a
yeah,
deep cut.
Yep. Yeah, I'm a nerd. Where are we at? Oh, I got it. Writing is art, and all art is political. That's
Mhm.
a statement that I can think. But superhero comics in particular are just explicitly political. There's always a political element to superheroes because, you
They're
know,
about power, and that's what politics is.
right, and they are literally social justice warriors. That's what a superhero is. Uh, you seem to be one of those creators that really leans into that idea. I mean, some people like try to say, "Oh no, that's not true. I'm apolitical." You have used your platform and your writing at times to promote feminism or to inspire women and girls. In a very explicit way. Can you talk a little bit about that? About how you think your art might be political in some fashion?
Well, I mean, I think all art is political. I don't understand the distinction. I don't understand
Right.
the idea of, and I'm not, this is not a critique of your question at all.
No.
What I mean is, when people talk about wanting to keep politics out of their comics, I think what they usually mean is they want the politics to align with their own,
Right.
and or to be hidden or something. I don't really understand, but literally superheroes are characters who are power fantasies in some way, and politics is defined as the struggle for power.
Right.
So whether you are, I mean, I've never, with the exception of Bitch Planet, which is very, very political in the way that people usually mean when they say political.
Right.
Um, None of my other comics venture into American politics,
Right.
but there's
I,
something about I don't know.
well,
Yeah, go ahead.
when when female, what I've noticed, and I think I may have stolen this observation for you, and from you, so you can tell me, is that when the female lead is a strong female character and does not have a love interest, suddenly they feel it's political. That's why some of those guys jumped on Captain Marvel, but were championing Alita because she has a love interest in that book. But I was actually thinking about how when Captain Marvel first took off and went off like a rocket, you kind of built up the Carol Corps as a way of,
Yeah.
you know, and then you have the bitches get things done list,
Hmm.
and then I did have Bitch Planet on my little list of things that I thought Kelly Sue had done that were overtly political. But just that you have this platform and you're writing the stories you want to write, but also just kind of on top of it, when you see those opportunities to inspire or to get a more overt political message across in Bitch Planet, you take those opportunities. That
Yes, absolutely. Look, I mean, I believe in the ethics of these characters off which our industry is built. And I believe that a big part of that is extending a hand and sharing a platform or giving your platform over. Always looking out for one another. And I think sisterhood is a really huge part of that. And I won't, I can't apologize for that. That's what I'm supposed to do, you
right,
know? I don't understand. I can't wrap my mind around why it's problematic for folks, but I don't also like I'm not coming to take anything away from anyone, which is sort of interesting to me that I think that people who get so very angry at I think it comes from a place of fear.
right,
And so I try to have compassion for the venom. And I don't, I'm a human being, so uh, I can't always manage it, but most of the time, what I try to do is see those attacks and think, Jesus Christ, you must really be hurting. You know, you must really be terrified, you must really be lonely or scared, and I hope that you find whatever it is that makes you feel whole, such that my existence doesn't disturb your peace.
The you're I would say a tattoo aficionado. Is that a fair thing to say?
Sure.
I've seen some pictures. You have that beautiful
I am
sleeve,
much tattooed.
much
Yeah.
tattooed. And I was just thinking, I'm in my girls are in roller derby, and we've been going for like 10.
Hey, right on.
And that's roller derby girls famous for having plenty of tattoos. And one of the ways that I know that I'm going to have something in common with somebody and sit down and talk with them is when I see that NC tattoo.
Oh, yeah.
It's happened multiple times, the non-compliant tattoo. So you have tattoos of your own, and I know for a fact that fans are walking up to you at cons and showing off the tattoo that was inspired by your art. Do you have
Yeah.
a favorite tattoo of yours? And is there a favorite one that a fan has come up and shown you something and you went, "Oh my God, that's beautiful," or "That's so original"? Can you give an example of one of each?
Oh. Let's see. Is this going to be a podcast or is this going to be a video that goes up?
It's going to be a video.
Okay. Oh, here we go. So I just got a new sleeve that I super love. It was done by this woman, Alice Kendall, here in Portland. And I don't know if you can see.
It's Joan of Arc.
It is Joan of Arc. Yeah. And then she also did. This is so hilarious. She also did Bunny and Butterfly for me from Pretty Deadly.
Oh, Pretty Deadly, right? Very cool.
So, yeah. So I'm very fond of those. My husband and my best friend and I all share this hand symbol, which has a lot of different names, including the patriarchal cross, which I find hilarious. But was also the symbol of the French Resistance. And has some resonance for our families. So I don't know if I could pick a favorite, but Joan's face super delights me. And then Bunny and Butterfly and my hand tattoo are the ones I see the most. So I love them a lot. And then, man, the tattoos, the NC tattoo thing has just been humbling, incredibly humbling. And I have to say that we can't talk about that phenomenon without talking about Valentine DeLandro and
Right.
just that has become so iconic because of his iconic design.
Right.
I think when there's so many of them that people have customized so that they reflect something of them to fill in the space. I always love those, but I think the ones where I'm like, wow, like it makes me get kind of choked up is when it's a mashup of more than one thing that I've worked on. So it'll be the NC with the Captain Marvel symbol inside of it, or the NC with Bunny and Butterfly.
Right.
And that makes me feel really humbled and really lucky to be working in a medium where the stories we make can affect someone's life and lift them enough that they want to wear it forever.
Right.
So yeah.
That's very cool. We mentioned Bitch Planet. It was only came out the first issue 6 years ago.
Only 6 years ago.
Which isn't a long time. But
I know.
when I read it again today, Bitch Planet means something very different to me today than it meant when it came out, when it was this kind of, parody homage to, Caged Heat and all these prison films of the 70s, the Big Birdcage with Pam Grier. And now we're living in an era. It's like when The Handmaid's Tale, all of a sudden had cultural relevance again. What do you think about when you think about Bitch Planet now versus when you first conceived of the idea those many, many years ago, 6 years ago?
Well, I mean, it's made it, the book was originally planned for 10 volumes.
Right.
We have managed to get out 2 volumes in 6 years. Now, part of that is the fact that, there's been a whole bunch of other projects that we've had to work on, both Val and I, but part of that is the 2016 election made that book very, very hard to write. Issue 11 is done. We will finish up this next arc. We're trying to decide whether or not we're going to go straight to trade or do individual issues again. I think with this kind of gap, we might have to go straight to trade, just because it may have been hurt in the marketplace too much. But yeah, it feels like a more important book now than ever before, but in some ways that makes it terrifying. Like, it was supposed to be a comedy, you guys.
Yeah, I am right there, and I think a large chunk of America is right there with you, that it used to be funny. So you developed the sexy lamp test, for which is kind of a adjunct to the Bechdel test, to judge how female characters are portrayed in the media. Could you just, because I love this and I use it in lectures and stuff, I steal it and say, oh, Kelly Sue DeConnick has this great thing. Could you tell people what the sexy lamp test is and how it functions?
Yeah. So we'll start with the Bechdel test. Okay. So Alison Bechdel proposed this test for media. Are there two women? In fact, I believe it is, are there two named women?
Right.
Do they speak to one another? And is it about something other than a man?
Right.
And I made the joke at one point that I think sometimes the Bechdel test is a little advanced for us. And and basically what I proposed was the sexy lamp test, which was if you can take the female character out and replace her with a sexy lamp or a sexy lamp with a Post-it on it, and your plot still functions. It depends on whether it's G-rated or R-rated as to what the then is, but the G-rated version is then you need another draft, or then you're a hack. But yeah, I mean, I think it stories and language reflect culture. They can change culture, but mostly they reflect culture. And we have a long history in our culture of treating women like props and supporting characters in someone else's story. And oftentimes the female character exists, to be broken and then avenged. You could do that with a lamp. To be kidnapped and rescued, you can do that with a lamp. To be the prize when the man succeeds, you could do that with a lamp. To be a pretty object that points somebody in some direction, you can do that with a lamp and a Post-it note.
The example I've used when I brought it up is Megan Fox in the first Transformers movie. Now, I've seen Megan interviewed on talk shows, and I think she's a wonderful woman. And in fact, she eventually objected to this very portrayal. But, basically every time Michael Bay had a chance, he had her bending over at the waist over a card, and she didn't have much of a function other than to look pretty. I used to say you could print out a poster of her and just move it from scene to scene because she didn't she was decoration, so that's my.
And look, it's like sexuality is great, and a woman's sexuality is amazing and wonderful and powerful, but she has to own it. Oh, I'm getting the signal. I have to go pick up my daughter. So let me go finish this thought. But you know, she has to own it. She has to have some interior life. She doesn't have to be a good person. I don't care if she's a good person. I am interested in women characters who are bad people.
Right.
But for her to have no interior life, to have no wants or desires or thoughts of her own, but rather to only exist for her physical self is embarrassing and sad, and it's bad for us. So there.
Well, Kelly Sue, thank you so much. I know you actually, now that I'm looking at the clock, gave me 10 more minutes than I thought I was getting. I appreciate that so much.
No worries.
And, did Tallulah stick with roller derby? I saw on Instagram.
Yes, she is at roller derby twice a week now. And she got her big thing is her Zuka bag. She has a Zuka bag now.
I have 2 Zuka bags because I have Hella on wheels, the Norse goddess of death, and Sketchy because Stella likes to draw. So hey, if we're gonna head up your way at some point, I imagine maybe there'll be a tournament or something, and we'll run into you guys there. Again, so I don't want to be the reason they call CPS on you for not getting your kid. But I'm so glad to see you. For some reason, after meeting that first time at WonderCon, we have never been at the same con ever since then. But
we gotta fix it.
I got to start going up north. I got to go to Emerald City. I keep going to SDCC and WonderCon, and you're not going down there. So,
all right. Well, I'm missing Emerald City this year. But thank you, John. It was a pleasure. Please give your girls my love, and I hope we get to talk again soon.
I hope we do. Thank you so much, Kelly.
You're welcome. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.